Hey, good afternoon to you. 506 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630 WMAL. President Trump has all sorts of ideas about what he'd like to do on your behalf and get the economy fired up again, should he return to the White House. Here's CBS reacting to one of the president's proposals.
It's an idea former President Donald Trump first introduced while campaigning this month in Nevada.
When I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips, people making tips.
Trump pitched it in the state with the highest percentage of service workers who would be affected.
It would probably sway me a little bit because it does help me at the end of the day.
It should sway you more than a little bit, and it's a big deal. Now you see all the Trump supporters all across the country writing on their receipts when they go out to restaurants, vote Trump for no taxes on tips, and then they leave a nice healthy tip for the workers. Kind of great. Let's talk about all of these ideas. There's more with EJ Antoni. He's an economist for, of course, the Vince Coglianese Show and the Heritage Foundation. EJ, good to talk, sir.
Vince, always good to be with you.
And I did you a favor this time. I didn't start with a Joe Biden clip. I started with a CBS clip talking about how great Donald Trump's tip plan is.
And may I say, you just made my day with that, okay? Believe me.
Okay, let's talk about this. It's not just tips, actually, that he'd like to get rid of taxes on. It's all income. All income. So President Trump has suggested, he said out loud, that his plan is to get rid of the federal income tax and instead impose tariffs on foreign imports. Give us a sense of what you think of this plan and what would the impact be on the country.
Well, absolutely love it. Soup to nuts. You know, if you look at the most prosperous times in this nation's history, specifically for the middle class, it was during a period when we had no income tax and where nearly all federal revenues came from taxes on imports. So a great time period, because that, again, is what created the middle class in this country. And as we have gotten away from that, we have hollowed out the middle class.
So this is importantly, as you're laying out the history of this, this is not some radical concept. This is a restorative concept. This brings us back to where the American middle class was growing rapidly and flourishing.
That's exactly right. In fact, the Constitution actually had to be changed in 1913 in order to even allow foreign income tax, because it was not constitutional according to how the founders set up the nation. And you know, I do want to address one point, Vince, which is that so many people have criticized this, saying, we don't want to tax trade. That's a terrible idea. What are you talking about? All taxes are taxes on trade. It's just a question of, do you want to tax international transactions or do you want to tax domestic transactions? A domestic tariff is basically what happens when you charge sales tax on an item. And when you are charging an income tax, you are charging a tariff on the exchange between someone's labor and someone else's money.
Yes. Yeah, the tax system is designed to incentivize and discourage behaviors. So if you know, people can pretend like that's not the case, but it definitely is. And if there's anything that's virtuous, it would be to encourage more production right here in the United States to the not only economic but social benefit of the people of this country.
That's exactly right. You know, why would you, if all else being equal, Vince, why would you encourage manufacturing, encourage production, encourage work in other countries when you could be doing it here at home? In other words, why would you employ a foreigner when you could employ your fellow Americans? That's not because we don't like foreigners, but it's because we live in a world of nation states, and we would rather see our nation state grow and prosper rather than seeing another nation state do so at the expense of ourselves.
So when you hear, so President Trump, of course, has said this on the campaign trail, and then over time he's offered all sorts of ideas on the campaign trail, some of which he actually puts into action as president of the United States. Do you hope he sticks with this one?
I do. I really do, for all the reasons that I've already laid out. But Another one is the fact that when we had tariffs in this country as the primary source of revenue, it was always very, very obvious to people when those tariffs were going up and down.
Right.
And that's not exactly the case with income taxes. So if you have these very large taxes on a relatively small number of goods, it is very much front of mind to people when government spending and government taxes are going up. I think that's a very good thing. It helps people realize that all government spending always has to be paid for.
Yeah, I mean, it would be pretty dramatic, wouldn't it? I mean, if President Trump can succeed on this particular policy, it would change the economy seismically, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Because, again, you're no longer going to be taxing domestic production. You're no longer penalizing people for earning a living, because that's really what's happening. Why do we impose taxes on things like cigarettes and alcohol? Because we want to discourage their consumption. Well, what do you think happens when you tax income? You discourage people earning as much as they otherwise would. And so by undoing that damage, essentially, you are going to return those very positive incentives to the marketplace, and people will respond to those incentives.
And would something like this also help resolve the problem of households that are required to have two incomes in order to survive? I mean, one of the big elements of kind of the dramatic problems, many of the dramatic problems that are going on in America are the result of, we're at a point where people just can't afford their lives, and they can't afford to raise families, and they can't do it on one income. Would this have the impact of helping to resolve that problem?
I think so, in part because what you're going to do, again, by making government spending and taxation so obvious to people, you're really shoving it right in front of their faces. And when you do that, you will help bring down government spending. And it is excess government spending which has been the source of so many of the problems we face today, including this cost of living crisis. Everything from the inflation to the higher interest rates.
So that's the other piece of this. You can raise tariffs sky high in order to generate government revenues, but we really are in the midst of a massive spending problem, EJ Antoni, aren't we? Because even if you restructure the way we generate tax revenue in the United States, that problem is here to stay, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is, absolutely. And, we need look no further than the latest CBO projections, which are, by the way, are always overly optimistic, and that's scary because the contents of those projections are pretty terrible. And looking at both the revenue side, the tax receipts, and also the outlay side, and seeing the fact that interest on the debt alone is absolutely exploding. It's already over $1 trillion a year, and it's going up at an insane pace.
Yeah, and that's and then we pay for that in the cost of everything. All right, let's talk about jobs now. I noticed in some of your coverage this week that that all of the Biden administration claimed throughout 2023 to be creating all these great jobs for American citizens. You and I have had a lot of conversations about what the actual makeup of the job market is, and it's not full-time jobs, it's part-time jobs, and it's not for American citizens, it's for foreign nationals. But something that probably hasn't received the attention it should is the fact that the government, by your understanding, has been overstating pretty dramatically even the measly jobs that they were parading around. What are the numbers really? Like, what happened?
Well, essentially, Vince, the monthly job numbers that we kept getting were constantly overstating the number of payrolls that businesses were actually adding. And that was partly resolved in subsequent monthly releases when those initial numbers were all revised down. Right. 10 out of 12 months last year were revised down, mostly by pretty large margins. But now on top of that, we get quarterly census data, which is much more reliable because unlike those monthly numbers, which only survey 100,000 or 200,000 businesses, this census data is millions of businesses, and it covers over 95% of all jobs, so much more comprehensive. What does that show? It shows that job gains were overestimated last year on top of the downward revisions by almost 800,000. In other words, about 1 in every 4 jobs that was supposedly added didn't even exist. It's like you took 3 whole months of the calendar worth of job growth and just tossed them in the trash.
So 25% of the jobs the Biden administration claimed last year don't even exist.
That's correct. So, if you get look at all the millions of jobs we added. We added, let's say 2 million jobs, whatever the case may be, right? Well, take a quarter of those out, so 500,000. Turns out they didn't even exist.
That's remarkable. And are the trends continuing on the issue that we talked about, the part-time jobs and foreign nationals getting all of the job gains?
We're seeing both of those trends continue. And, Vince, another really, frankly, disturbing trend that I've noticed that is continuing to get worse is that if you break the data down, not just nationally and not even just state by state, but you really zero in on metropolitan areas, what you find is only about 13% of all the metro areas in the entire country are accounting for literally all the payroll growth. So the idea that this is somehow a widespread recovery, I'm sorry, but the data just don't support that.
The government hires a lot of people. How much is the government responsible for the numbers we're talking about, to the extent that any of them are real?
Well, I like to include in these government numbers not just direct hiring by the government. In other words, not just literally someone who works for the Treasury Department, let's say, but we should also include anyone whose job is funded with taxpayer dollars. And so what's the result of that? It means you need to include not just the direct hiring, but the indirect hiring, and that accounts for half the job growth that we allegedly had last year. That is not sustainable. Vince, we've talked before about how you need a certain ratio of private sector jobs being added to public sector jobs being added because you need the tax revenue from those private sector jobs in order to support the public sector ones. I mean, a ratio of 1-to-1 is nowhere near where we need to be. You need to typically be somewhere around 20-to-1 at a minimum
in order to afford that one government-funded employee, taxpayer-funded employee. It's such an important topic. I'm so glad you're all over the details as always. EJ Antoni, thank you for that, an overview of both President Trump's ambitions as future president and Joe Biden's limitations as current president. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, Vince. Always good to be with you.
It's just great to get that assessment. All right, hold on. I've got more of your calls coming up, 888-630-9625. I've got some debate information for you. I found out more about debate camp, what Joe Biden is doing while he's away at Camp David for the next week. And there's a whole lot more ahead. They always talk about politics, pocketbook issues. The stuff that hits you directly is the stuff that you really grab a hold of. Somebody comes along and they says they're going to get rid of your federal income taxes entirely. That definitely gets your attention, Tipped workers, you won't have to pay taxes on your tips anymore. Well, that's kind of interesting. Tell me more. It's President Trump's plan. Mike's in Sunshine, line 1. Mike, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Vince, great to hear your voice.
Thank you.
I want to say that, our captains of industry, our elite, they're kind of hooked on cheap labor abroad.
Yes.
And, Chinese slave labor is probably very cheap. Yep. But if we can tax that labor through tariffs, it might give them a second pause. But they might pause and say, well, slave labor in China, it's got to come back here with a tariff. Maybe it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah, and no one will fight harder to block this positive change for the country than a lot of those companies that you're talking about, who kind of look the other way. They pretend like, oh, I didn't realize slave labor was a part of our supply chain, and sure enough, it is. And right there in China. And yeah, so basically we'd create incentives to hire American workers, to have American manufacturing, American industry, to reshore here in the United States, and we'd let people keep more of their own money. It sounds wonderful, which is probably why it'll never happen. Washington will fight tooth and nail to stop it. But you're right. They're a lot easier on China and a lot tougher on American citizens.
Yeah, and then the service industry, the old Laffer curve, you might not have you might have a lower tax rate or no tax rate, but they might get more revenue if they just lower the tax rate on tips. For
sure. Yeah. And the other thing is sometimes it'll still be worth hiring some foreign company to produce something that you need, that they create a quality product for. But you'll just have to do the math on it. It might be worth it still. It might be worth it to pay the tariff. But at least here you have kind of an America First ideology animating this, which is a good thing. And I love the concept, and I hope that it gets a serious debate and a serious push here in Washington, because it deserves it. It's the kind of radical change that would be to our benefit.
Thanks, Dan.
Mike, thank you, Mike. Yeah, Mike pointing out, look at all the slave labor that's in the supply chain, and how often, how often have iPhones and all sorts of goodies been? You get a report every so often. You're like, wait a second, I think there's slaves in the supply chain here. Everyone's like, oh, but I like my cheap plastic crap. I'm gonna look the other way on that. Well, how about this? How about we double the amount of money in your bank account? How about that? And then you can spend your money and buy some more products made in America. That'd be good. That'd be a good change. Hey, coming up, I've got some more debate information for you as Joe Biden is off at debate camp for the next week. How he is preparing for his bout with President Trump. The physical effort he's undertaking right now. I kid you not. They are subjecting him to some physical feats right now to prepare him for this debate. And why it is, at least according to the left-wing press, that Joe Biden selected the podium on the right side of the stage. We'll explore that and so much more. And, of course, as always, take your calls, 888-630-9625. So much more ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon. You can join us here on the program, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Always value your contributions. President Biden is off training, doing his Rocky montage right now, getting ready for that big debate next week. What is he doing to prepare? Well, CBS told us this week there were going to be some surprises, some physical surprises next week. I don't know what that involves, if he's going to be juggling chainsaws or what. But we're getting a little more detail today. ABC reports that Joe Biden, I kid you not, will be practicing standing for 90 straight minutes this week. He's practically training for a marathon. Here he is.
Now, part two of that, Phil, of that debate prep, it's going to be actually putting that into action with these mock debates. This is going to include a 90-minute formal debate where the president is standing up on his feet the entire time, trying to mirror what he's going to have to do in real time next week.
Oh, my goodness. He's going to do a full 90 minutes of standing. You know, maybe they can add a little bit of a challenge to it, but give him like a walking desk or something. So he has to, walk the entire time, 90 minutes. Maybe start small. Don't do the full 90 minutes right away. Nobody does the full 26 miles for the marathon right away. No, they start smaller. You start with, get a couple of 10-mile runs in. Just have him stand for, 30 minutes. See if that works. Yeah, anyway, so Biden's going to stand straight up and down for 90 minutes. I don't know if he's allowed to lean on the lectern or what other rules they'll be imposing, but ABC in this case, with that exclusive report today from the White House, and they act like that's a big deal. He's going to stand. He's going to stand 90 minutes. We found out a little bit more today about why it is that Joe Biden has selected his podium as his most important thing. Remember, this week they did a coin toss, and Biden won, apparently. Apparently he chose tails, and his selection came true. And I'm a tails guy, too. I like tails. That's a good one. If you flip a coin, I'm a tails guy. But Biden selects tails. He gets it right, so he gets one of two options. Either you get to pick your position on the stage, or you get to pick who goes last for closing arguments. And he picked his position on the stage. And we were talking about this yesterday. What? Why would you do that unless there was some sort of deceptive thing going on? There's like some sort of deceit here. Is he hiding an earpiece? People have been speculating. Is it closer to some sort of exit that he can more easily get out of? So he's not wandering all the way across the stage at the conclusion of the event. There's less time for him on camera as he's maneuvering. whatever the reason, he chooses stage right. The campaign does, at least, chooses stage right, leaving President Trump and his campaign to say, okay, we'll go last for closing remarks, closing statements. President Trump gets the last word. Now, obviously, CNN will get the last word, regardless of what the candidates are saying. It doesn't matter that President Trump is going last. CNN will get the final word, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. But as far as the candidates are concerned, President Trump gets the last word, which is what you want. That's what you would prefer. So it was insane to me, just as a practical matter, that Joe Biden's campaign wouldn't choose the closing statement preference. The podium position? What a waste. Well, the Daily Beast has a big story up today where they claim to at least give a reason for all of this. They say Joe Biden is celebrating an early win ahead of his presidential debate against Donald Trump. Get ready. This is a totally North Korean piece. With CNN revealing Thursday he won a coin flip that granted him first dibs on his stage position for next week's spectacle. With Biden correctly picking tails, he chose to debate from the Atlanta stage's left side, a decision that may be more consequential than most think. That's because in a setting that involves two figures, viewers are inherently drawn to the right, experts say, which is where Biden will be displayed on millions of TV screens across the country. That positioning will likely earn Biden an extra chunk of eyeball time by default, assuming viewers can break away from Trump's repeated antics and interruptions. The extra attention to screens right is a phenomena that's been cited as the reason nearly every late-night TV host, from Jimmy Fallon to Steve Allen, have been positioned to the right of their guests in each interview. And it's likely why Biden's camp prioritized stage positioning over choosing the order of closing statements. The White House did not immediately respond to questions sent by the Daily Beast on the reasoning behind Biden's choice. So I love this piece. What I love about this is that the Daily Beast went all in. They immediately were like, this is brilliant. What a genius level move. The Biden campaign, they won the coin toss and they chose stage right. And they did it for psychological reasons. They know that if you're standing on that side of the stage, viewers think you're in the power position. It was a power move on Biden's part. And the evidence that this is a ridiculous explanation is found in the line, the White House did not immediately respond to questions sent by the Daily Beast on the reasoning behind Biden's choice. Because even the White House is like, that's so stupid. We're not even getting involved in this. No, that's not the reason the White House chose that position. But the Daily Beast wants everybody to think it is. So they're insisting today that that their dear leader made an amazing choice. What a spectacular choice he made. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign's like, really? You're going to kick us the ball for both halves? Yeah, we'll take it. Yeah, we'll receive. So that's hilarious. CNN is something else too. They're blocking RFK Jr. from the debate. They set up the rules in such a way to try and accommodate Biden's demands and, of course, CNN's desire to banish RFK Jr. from all of this. So RFK fails to qualify for the CNN debate. Karen Townsend over at Hot Air writing about this today. Independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did not qualify for the CNN presidential debate. His campaign is organizing a protest outside of CNN's New York studios at Hudson Yards on Friday. Kennedy will not be there. Kennedy complained that President Biden and former President Trump don't want him to be on the stage with them, and CNN illegally agreed to their demand. Karen notes that it is probably true that the Biden campaign wanted to exclude Kennedy. Of course they did. Because look at all the polling. State-by-state polling has demonstrated that to the extent that Kennedy is causing any damage here for either of these two candidates, it's mostly to Biden. The Biden campaign did everything they could to keep him from running against Biden. He made the move to being an independent candidate because of how the DNC was rigging the Democrat primary to protect Biden. Imagine if Kennedy had to leave the Democrat Party to run as an independent. We live in strange times, Karen writes. This may be the beginning of the end of Kennedy's presidential campaign. She notes that no third-party candidate has been on a presidential debate stage since 1992. That's when Ross Perot self-funded his campaign. He debated against the incumbent that year, President George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton. Perot was determined to deny Bush a second term. I hope RFK is determined to deny Biden a second term, even if Trump wins. The debate qualification window closed at 12 a.m. and 1 second on Thursday. Biden and Trump met the constitutional ballot qualification and polling thresholds that were set by CNN. The CNN requirements that had to be met to participate in the debate were clearly outlined, and they go through. You have to be constitutionally eligible to run for president. You've got to appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to reach the 270 electoral vote threshold to win the presidency, and you have to receive at least 15% in 4 separate national polls that CNN got to choose. So Kennedy failed. Kennedy didn't meet 2 of the criteria. He didn't earn at least 15% support in the polls that CNN picked. And the second thing he failed was he failed to officially be on the ballot in enough states to win all 270 of the electoral college votes he would need to become president. But he's on a bunch of states. He's on the ballot. Well, he's on the ballot in 6 states: California, Delaware, Hawaii, Michigan, Oklahoma, and Utah. That adds up to 89 electoral votes. So not enough to get him nowhere close to get him. But he's been, petitioning for ballot access, and he brought that rich lady on to be his running mate to help pay for all of this. So he's still trying to fight to get on these ballots. And the Biden campaign's fighting to keep him off. They've been fighting tooth and nail to deny Kennedy access to ballots because they believe in nothing more than suppressing voters. That's really the move. The Biden people, they really resent the vote. This is why they were trying to fight to keep Trump off the ballot. They didn't want Trump on the ballot. Places like Colorado and Maine, they were trying to exclude him from even appearing on the presidential ballot. Yet he is. Donald Trump is succeeding there, and despite all of the things they're throwing at him, he's using it for his own success. Even these courtroom battles that he's been having. So the Biden team has been orchestrating all of these indictments against Donald Trump in an effort to wound him in an election year. But it's blowing up in their face because, one, President Trump is accruing more support in survey after survey, in particular in the swing states. I know that there was a Fox News poll this week that showed Joe Biden up by, 2 points? But then you look deeper into the crosstabs, and they have absurd numbers across rural America suggesting that Biden has this huge support in rural America. And you start to think, I don't think the math is right on this survey. It is an outlier in that way. But then you look at the swing state polling, and I'm telling you, Emerson College yesterday had big swing state polling showing that President Trump is doing very well in all of these swing states, either tied or ahead in every one of the most meaningful swing states in the country. And he's even creating more swing states. Virginia, where President Trump is going to be next week, Friday, he's doing a rally in Virginia. And guess who's appearing alongside him? Governor Glenn Youngkin. That'll be 2 of the tallest politicians in America standing on the same stage. Governor Glenn Youngkin, there were some questions based mostly on Glenn Youngkin's own comments. You started listening, and you're like, are you campaigning with him or not? Because there would be all these answers he would give to the press, and they would be a little, let's be honest, a little weaselly. You'd hear them, and you're like, I don't even know. Is he really campaigning with Trump? Is he endorsing the guy? Does he support the guy? It sounds like he's all in now. He's campaigning with Trump. He's on his side. So he'll be doing that next week, Friday. That's what all the reporting says. We'll see. There's still time for him to change his mind. I hope he doesn't. I hope he does campaign with him. Because I do think that Governor Youngkin is a boon to Trump. And will be helpful. He got elected governor in Virginia. People wanted him in that position. And so hopefully, if there are people who are squeamish about voting for Trump or something, maybe Youngkin could have some impact on the margins. But they should campaign together. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. And Virginia's in play. And boy, that's great for Virginians, isn't it? You really want this kind of attention. You want presidential candidates sucking up to you. You want Donald Trump to come and do a rally in your neighborhood. You want the campaign to be thinking about what do Virginians in particular need for us to impress them. That is what you want. And so that'll be good. That'll be good for the whole Commonwealth, for our area. It'll also increase the likeliness that we get to have more conversations with President Trump ahead of Election Day because this is the audience he wants to speak to. So if anybody on the Trump campaign is listening, this is your regular reminder that we have a standing invite out to the president that we'd like to chat with him again. But everybody's preparing for this debate. They say that Trump is doing policy conversations, merely talking to the people around him. the policy experts that he knows and works with. He did a really long podcast this week. Did you see that? He did this long podcast with a bunch of rich guys. They were all sitting around talking to him. And he went the distance. That was a long podcast, and it was all policy focused. And he was sharp, lucid, all over the issues in a good way. In a good way. Not so with Biden though. I don't think Biden can do this. This is why. I mean, for real. I know we joke about it, but like, isn't it crazy that they have to practice standing for 90 minutes with him? Standing in his overinflated stability shoes. 90 minutes. They have to. Let's see if he can do it. Okay. He's a little tuckered out. We'll wait 2 days before we try again. A full week of debate prep. And the video footage was going around this morning. The RNC was sharing it. Of Biden traveling to Camp David. And the transition from Air Force One to Marine One, honestly, one of the most painful videos I've seen yet of Biden. Just in terms of his slowness. He just looks sad. They didn't have the phalanx of staffers around him this time to block the sight, the vision. And he's moving at a glacial pace. And he finally made it. He's, he kind of gives kind of a meager salute to the troops, the Marines there at Marine One, and gets aboard. But this can only go on for so long. Which is why you see all these people speculate, are they going to give him the hook at some point? Either that or they think they can drag him across the finish line and be like, okay, resign now. This is the only way Kamala Harris becomes president. We'll make her president now. We'll see.
If you're sitting in Biden's headquarters, you do not like these numbers because what they do show is that Donald Trump is going to have enough money to run this campaign in a very full way. You don't like that your numbers are so much smaller than his in that month of May, and you're probably redoubling your efforts to raise money to make sure that that doesn't happen. If you just look at Trump and the RNC, they raised $106 million together in May. We look at Biden and the DNC, that number is $60 million. The difference there is basically 76% more for Trump and the RNC than Biden and the DNC. That's not sustainable for the Democrats if that were to continue month after month.
Yeah, it's the other piece of the effort to persecute Trump. It's only resulting in a lot more contributions heading to the Trump campaign. So in that way, President Trump has turned all of this into an advantage, as he so often does. It's really kind of an amazing thing. One other thing on the debate, President Trump is out there saying, in that podcast I just referenced, he said that he thinks Joe Biden is a, quote, worthy debater. In particular, he referenced Biden's debate with Paul Ryan, who he's none too happy with. Paul Ryan was on the Fox News channel the other day, unashamed of his anti-Trump demeanor and representations in public. Trump was smacking him around. He said, I watched him with Paul Ryan, referring to Joe Biden, and he destroyed Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan with the water. He was chugging water at a left and right. I didn't think a human being would be able to drink so much water at one time. He beat Paul Ryan. So some glancing blows to catching some strays over there, Paul Ryan, in the midst of all this. But Trump playing the expectations game, saying, yeah, Biden's a very worthy debater. I saw him do that to Paul Ryan. So it doesn't want people to view Biden as a tomato can. Just easy to beat inside the ring. Let's see here. I've got Greg calling in from Lorton, line 2. Greg, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. How are you, sir? Thank you
so
much for all the work you do for us, man. Thank you.
God bless. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. I just wanted to say one real quick thing, and I'll get off the line. Trump, in my opinion, should simply stand up there and give a speech outlining all the lies that Biden has told, and then in the second part of the debate, outline all the foreign policy failures, and the third part of the debate, outline all the domestic policy failures, right?
I agree with you. Yeah.
I mean, just give a speech, man.
Greg, I totally agree with you. Here's the problem. He only has 90 minutes. Up next, the great one, Mark Levin here on WMAL.